Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. If you don't know me by now, I'm one of the co-owners, Jordan, and to my right, as always, is the founder himself, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
Doing pretty decent actually. It's getting a little bright outside. It's early morning and stuff, so we've had garbage trucks driving by. It's trash day.
Fair.
Um,
Fair.
yeah.
It's mid-afternoon for me right now, because obviously, if you don't know, I'm actually based in the UK. Jeff is in Canada. Um, so yeah, running our website is quite interesting in that sense. But you know, check us out if you haven't already. And to those of you that have, thank you for checking us out. Our audience has grown a lot, as we said on the last podcast. And if you've just discovered our podcast, please make sure you subscribe for more. We try and be weekly as much as possible, but time zone differences and both of us having the occasional health issues does sometimes factor into our ability to record, and also the fact that apparently there's like a million games to play, Jeff. So,
Oh God, I thought it was busy the last week, whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
no, I mean I've been playing
things
quite a
are
bit, but
crazy.
one major.
And of course, today, as you will know by the title of the episode and this fancy new looking overlay which Jeff whipped up,
And
amazing work, we are talking about one of the biggest releases probably this year, really, right?
yeah, Metal Slug Tactics. I know it's painfully obvious.
Dragon Age the Veilguard, which we have both played. I've had a weird situation where I lost my save file, so I'm currently waiting for hopefully some version of my save file to be restored so that I can carry on playing. But I have still played somewhere in the region of 25 to 30 hours. Um, and as a quick side note, I have all the companions. I know Jeff is quite a little bit further on than me. However, we will speak about some spoilers of the game, but obviously I'm not looking to be spoiled on the later parts of the game there, Jeff. So we'll leave those out for people to discover for themselves,
Yeah,
or
for sure. I mean,
we might.
the game's out. It's not like we're, advanced preview or anything like that. So like
Yes,
a good
unfortunately
portion of what we're going to
we
talk about
didn't
is
have
already
that
out.
fortune, but I would like to say thank you to my contact who got me a code for Dragon Age the Veilguard on release day, so I actually didn't have to pay for the game, and I was able to get it for free. Thankfully, very much for that. Um, because with there being so many games and consoles coming out and all other sorts of things, I've had lots of money to spend recently. But we'll talk more about that as we go through the episode. For now, Jeff, should we get straight into the news? Because we've got a lot of
Sure.
news here today.
We got a fair chunk. Some small stuff, some good stuff, some big stuff, and some surprising stuff. I'll kind of just go through the my ordered list here. Um, all right. Sony closed Concord Studio Firewalk to further its monopoly in games, Labor body says. The Communication Workers of America, CWA, has claimed that Sony's decision to close Firewalk and Neon Koi was a move to further its monopoly position in the video game industry. As reported by game developer, the labor body condemned Sony's decision, which this week saw its closure of two studios. Parent company Sony Interactive, which only acquired Firewalk last year, confirmed on Tuesday that it was shutting the company down after its debut of Concord bombed. Collective bargaining not only allows workers a seat at the table to bargain for fair compensation, but also to voice on the job to have a say on how workers will be impacted by job cuts, the CWA said in a statement. Firewalk's first and only release was Concord, a live service shooter, which Sony signed early in development for an initial $200 million, according to Kotaku. Its sources claimed that the amount wasn't enough to cover the full game's development and also didn't include the acquisition of Concord IP rights, basically pushing the total up to about $400 million for Sony to make the game. Sony's decision to dissolve studios outside of their walled garden of PlayStation exclusive content, rather than making games that have to compete in a highly diverse competitive mobile game market, should be a cautionary warning sign of Sony's interest in furthering a monopoly position in the video games industry. CWA plans to raise the anti-competitive impacts of Sony's increasing monopoly and monopsony power with the appropriate antitrust regulators, policymakers, and stakeholders. So, I mean, I kind of see where they're going for.
Yeah.
You know, this whole thing, like, it kind of it just kind of sucks, you know, like especially with Concord and everything. And Sony actually, their president actually reflected on Concord, why it failed. So I'll bring that story in here as well. Sony president, COO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki has shared his views on why Concord was a failure. During a Q&A session following its latest financial earnings call, Sony management was asked numerous questions about the live service game, which was shut down 11 days after launch. Totoki explained that the company's foray into live service games is still a learning process and that it has to take lessons from what happened with Concord. Currently, we are still in the process of learning, said via the interpreter. And basically, with regards to new IP, of course, you don't know the result until you actually try it. So for us, our reflection, we probably need to have lots of gates, including user testing or internal evaluation, and the timing of such gates. And then we need to bring them forward. And should we have done those gates much earlier than we did? Also, we have a siloed organization. So going beyond the boundaries of those organizations in terms of development and also sales, I think that could have been much smoother. And then going forward in our titles and in our third-party titles, we do have many different windows. And we want to make sure that we select the right and optimal window so that we can deploy them on our own platform without cannibalization, so that we can maximize our performance in terms of title launches. That's all I have. He goes on about a few other things, especially with like Helldivers and you know, guys essentially learning their lessons and things like that. But here's my biggest issue: you're gonna learn fuck all unless you actually stick with a game and build it back up. Because if you build a game and it fails and you just scrap it and move on to the next thing, you've learned absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Do you know another game that initially failed, Jeff?
Rainbow Six Siege.
And yeah, and even in another way, a completely different type of game.
Final
But
Fantasy
look at
14.
And another one. Any others you can think of
that have absolutely failed? I mean, you get what is it? No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. That's the one I was thinking of. One of the biggest stories ever, right?
And then every bit of DLC for that game has been free.
Yeah. So they've made it into
like,
what
the
they wanted it to be.
Exactly. And the community is kind of like, dude, if you want to charge for DLC, we will pay for it. Like it's very difficult to get like fans to go like, we'll pay for it. Just stop. We'll pay for it. You know, like it's insane. But like,
yeah,
again,
so
like,
it just shows that sticking with a game is important. And as you said, you know, you aren't going to learn anything if you give up at the first hurdle. Another, you know, this is a personal example, and I'm sure Jeff can attest to this, but I wasn't very good at this writing stuff when I first started doing it. But if I had just been like, "Oh, I'm not very good. I'm going to give up now, Jeff. Sorry, bye."
you know, well, your first review you sent to me was literally just like 2 words that said "game good," and I'm like, you have to expand on this, Jordan.
So it's, you know, it's one of those things where you have to. Yes, okay, I understand there's a business element to it, and you can't keep just throwing money away, but things do deserve a second chance, and we've seen so many occasions now where companies decide to stick with games and they do actually have a massive turnaround. Another one even is Cyberpunk, right? And that's a completely different type of game with completely different reasons for its initial failure among many people.
And another one that's recently that I'm waiting for the Xbox release, which has been delayed indefinitely just because, again, it's a small team, they don't have much money, is Airship Syndicate's Wayfinder. Wayfinder launched as an MMO under the publishing means of Digital Extremes, who do Warframe.
Yes.
And the game failed so miserably that Digital Extremes dissolved their publishing arm and cut ties with Airship Syndicate. And Airship Syndicate then took their own money and revamped the game into just a single player or optional 3-player co-op game. And it's released on PC right now. It's released on PS5 right now. I'm waiting for the Xbox release just so I don't have to pay the online to play it on PlayStation.
Yes. Yeah.
But that game has gone from largely negative reviews to mostly positive stuff, and it
Yeah.
looks so fucking good.
And like I mentioned before in the case of Concord, and I want to talk about what the Workers Association said in a moment, but like we said before, the thing about Concord is, as much as we laugh about it now, and it was a failure, and it maybe wasn't the most unique thing in the world, the game did have something because there were people that played it that actually did like it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is it had too many barriers to entry, which really hurt it, and it was coming out, without really much marketing. Like, it had like 2 months of marketing before release, but it was shown like twice in that time and not really much of anything else. So I think that they sort of, cut their nose off to spite their face type of thing with Concord.
Yeah, it's just like the thing that gets me, and I've said it already, is that they're talking about using this as a learning process, but they're not trying to learn about what actually caused it to fail, or the brief little moments of success with the sales that it had. They're not
Yes.
learning any of it. Like, if you're making supper and you've never cooked this particular dish before, and it just seems everything's going wrong, you don't scoop it all up and throw it in the trash. You're basically, okay, how can I salvage this? And like,
It's
it's so frustrating to see these guys that are like up in these positions or running this company that are so disillusioned to what's actually going on to these types
Yes.
of things, and they're not looking at like things like Rainbow Six or No Man's Sky or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
They're just going at it with blinders.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, going back to the talk about them trying to further their monopoly and all that sort of stuff, I think there is a case and there is a conversation to be had there. Is it really going to come to anything? Probably not. Because I think that ultimately what we see happening with PlayStation right now is they've already cut back on their live service push a little bit. We know that they've cut about half of the projects they did have in development. And I think that we see them starting to focus on what they know they're good at, right? And we saw Herman Holst mention this as well when he announced the closure of these two studios, is that we're kind of, if you read between the lines, he was saying we're struggling to do these types of things because we don't have enough experience in them.
Yeah, but
Um,
they're never going to have the experience unless they stick with actually working on it. Like,
yeah,
basically, like, we're basically now in the future where all we're getting is third person like walking games through Sony. That's all they've been doing over the past like freaking decade,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
it's just the same games. Yes, they're draped in everything else that kind of makes them different. Like, Spider-Man's not the same as God of War, you know.
yeah. They have small differences, but on a big level, on a big sort of concept level, they are largely the same game, right? Very similar structures, very, very like I know that there's someone around who always says, "Oh, Sony games are the dad simulator," because it usually involves you as some sort of older man.
Or a parental figure in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Like you're basically Miles's dad, not biological,
Yeah.
obviously.
Um, there is, of course, speaking of Sony games, and I think we should stay on the Sony sort of PlayStation news train here. They they also are making a Wolverine game, but they have lost one of their main developers from that team, right?
Yeah, let me grab the news here. I just don't have it, the templates. Oh God, where is it? I know it's somewhere. It's around. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yeah, so the creative director of PlayStation's Wolverine has joined Xbox's The Initiative to helm its Perfect Dark reboot. As first reported by GameFile game designer Brian Horton, no relation to Canada's Tim Hortons, who was previously named publicly as the creative director of Insomniac's Wolverine title in 2021, has left the studio this summer. Wolverine is now being led by design duo behind 2021's Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, creative director Marcus Smith, and game director Mike Dolly. It's claimed Wolverine previously announced game director Cameron Christian will reportedly remain at the studio in a different role. According to GameFile sources, the change in leadership for Wolverine is the result of creative decisions around the game. The game's previous creative director, Horton, who previously helmed Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider, has joined his fellow Crystal Dynamics alumni at Xbox's The Initiative.
Yeah.
Horton will bring his wealth of experience to the upcoming reboot to the classic Secret Agent series, an Xbox rep confirmed to GameFile. Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh no, like Wolverine is doomed, or Perfect Dark
No, of
is
course it's not
doomed
doomed.
because now it has a new director. No, this just means that they brought somebody in who they feel can reinvigorate certain creative decisions around the game
Yeah.
and get it past the finish line.
And
Same with
also,
Insomniac.
what it means on the other side is, Brian Horton, maybe he wasn't happy with the direction that they wanted to take
Yep.
on Wolverine. And he goes, okay, I'll leave. He's going to go and join his buddies who he's worked with every single one of them before, and he's made games with them where he had this role. Like, he has become the creative director on Perfect Dark. That is the same role he did on the Tomb Raider game for
Mm-hmm.
Crystal, who are the main support studio for the initiative on Perfect Dark. And as I've said before, and I still speculate and think the same thing, you give it a few years and Crystal Dynamics will be the initiative. Like that, I really, really think that there is going to be some form of either ownership change for Crystal or some form of long term partnership between the initiative and Crystal Dynamics, because everyone who has an official role at the initiative, uh, in a leadership role, has worked for Crystal Dynamics in the past at this
Mm-hmm.
point. So I just think that it's kind of like getting the band back together, right? It's kind of like after those first two Tomb Raider games, because we know the third one was made by Eidos with the help of Crystal. After those first two Tomb Raider games, as Crystal moved on to Avengers, their team changed a little bit and
Yeah.
people sort of left and went to other studios and all that kind of thing. And I think that over the last year or so, they've kind of been getting the band back together, and it's going to be interesting to see, because the other thing is Perfect Dark is very different to Tomb Raider,
Mm-hmm.
and we've seen a bit of it, but there could be similarities as well.
Well, I mean, it does have like some type of like parkour climbing kind of like elements. It's got a strong female lead. It's
Yeah,
got kind of supernatural things in the background, basically. So like there are parallels for sure. I think it's just the first person view to the third person view that's
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be
starkly
really
different.
interesting to see, and I think that someone of Brian Horton's experience, and clearly, let's be honest, someone with his very strong track record. Like, you can go back and you can find out every single game he's worked on. And he has worked on some amazing games. Like, and especially over the last decade or so, he's had a leadership role on some amazing games. So I think this is an amazing move for him. I wish him well, because at the end of the day, these developers have to do what's best for them. They're people, and I think we often forget that sometimes. But this is also what I was surprised about with this move, is because when I originally saw the headline, I thought, "Oh, has Brian Horton gone back to Crystal Dynamics?" But no, he's actually an employee of Xbox and the Initiative. So he hasn't rejoined Crystal Dynamics, he has joined Xbox.
So this leads me to my question. When this game is completed, when they've hit
Yes.
1.0, when the discs are being printed, do you think that Xbox then uses the leverage of Brian Horton and what they've done with this game to just essentially purchase Crystal Dynamics?
I think so. That's my opinion on it, is they will either purchase Crystal, or what will happen is the Crystal part of the team that worked on this game will essentially all join the initiative, and that is how they'll build their studio. Because I forget the guy's name, and I apologize, but the actual head of the initiative, um, Dara something, I think his name is, or something like that. He used to be the head of Crystal Dynamics
Yeah,
before he
Daryl
took.
Gallagher.
Yes, Daryl Gallagher. Before he took the role at the initiative, he was the head of Crystal Dynamics. So the building blocks are in place there for that kind of move, and I really do think, you know, I know that Crystal are working with Amazon as well on the Tomb Raider game and everything.
Yeah,
They're they're owned obviously by those horrible people that like to hug everyone to death. But you know, those that their ownership doesn't really seem to do anything with them, because every game they're making is with someone else.
yeah,
So that leads me to believe there could be a situation where either Crystal Dynamics gets broken up and the two teams get hired into the separate studios. So, like, the Tomb Raider team will go over to Amazon because Amazon own at least part of the Tomb Raider rights, as I understand it. And then the Perfect Dark team would go over to the Initiative,
yeah,
or maybe they are doing it to create somewhat of a bidding war, right? Because if you have Crystal working with two different big companies, maybe your hope is, if these games can both release within the next 2 or 3 years, you then create potentially some sort of bidding war over Crystal Dynamics. And given the amount of money that Embracer spent to acquire the Western studios of Square, they could end up in a situation where Crystal Dynamics is actually worth just as much, if not more, than they paid for every single one of those studios. So,
yeah. And like, so on the the Wolverine side, you brought in the co-directors essentially of the Rift Apart, which makes me wonder, like, what is the other Insomniac then working on? Have they all just went straight into Wolverine?
I'll take a guess, and this is a wild one, but I think it's possible. I think they might be working on some sort of Sunset Overdrive sequel.
Yeah,
And I think it will be Sunset Overdrive, and it won't be Sunset Overdrive 2, it will be Sunset Overdrive and then a subtitle, because I think they'll essentially treat it as a new start for the franchise, and knowing PlayStation, they'll try and act like that first game doesn't exist.
yeah,
Um, the reason that I think that is because I think the guy's name is Drew Murray. He used to work for the initiative, actually. I believe he was the creative director initially on Perfect Dark all those years ago, but he was the director on Sunset Overdrive back in the day,
Yeah.
and he rejoined Insomniac, and nobody knows what he's been working on yet.
Mm,
So that leads me to believe that maybe, like my thing is maybe they could be working on some sort of Sunset Overdrive sequel or a similar type of game.
yeah.
It's
Sunrise
gonna be
Overdrive.
interesting to see. I think that, you know what though, I'm quite surprised in a way that we have the co-directors of Ratchet and Clank taking over the Wolverine game,
Yeah, so
because
in the Wolverine game, you bring up basically a radio menu, and you have like exploding claws, laser claws, like like all those different like Ratchet and Clank weapons, but as
it's
Wolverine's claws.
it's just a weird choice. Like if
And
it
he has a
was
little
me,
robot Colossus that's just on his shoulder.
if it was me, and when I saw this news, my initial get like when I saw the news that Brian Horton was leaving the position, my initial guess was that they would get Brian Inhatar, who was the director on 2018's Spider-Man, and I thought he would take up the Wolverine game. That was my initial thought,
Yeah.
because there's more parallels there, you would assume, but it's going to be really interesting to see. And there was a report recently, but it's not verified, that potentially Wolverine is coming in the second half of next year, so we might see it at some point next year, so that's going to be
I think
interesting
we'll
to
get a
see.
trailer at the Game Awards this year. I think it's
Interesting. Interesting.
I wouldn't put money on it, but I think that's the first
Definitely
time we'll
possible.
officially see
Definitely
it.
possible. Speaking of the Game Awards, there's someone who likes to show up at the Game Awards quite a lot that was surprisingly in the news yesterday, and that was Hideo Kojima. And why was he in the news, Jeff?
Oh, you're making me find these tabs really quickly. Oh God. All right. All right. So I got that one. Where is it? Oh, I think I actually oh, here we are. Yeah, so Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, formerly on the PlayStation console as an exclusive, is now available for Xbox Series X and S in a surprise release. The developer announced the Xbox version in a social media post on Thursday and confirmed that it would be available at a 50% discount for a limited time, which means it costs approximately $20 in the US and about $17.49 in the UK. The announcement was made as the clock ticked to midnight in Japan, marking exactly 5 years since Death Stranding was first released for PlayStation 4, which could suggest that the exclusive agreement has expired. According to Xbox's official page, Death Stranding includes support for Xbox achievements, cloud saves, play anywhere, as well as the director's cut features such as photo mode, ultra wide monitor support, and more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like this one's been kind of a
There is also a little bit to add on to this news, and I did write about it at the Outer Haven, so you can go and read it. But along with this news, in the official press release, um, apparently the Sony do not own the Death Stranding IP anymore, as they
yeah.
originally did. Kojima and Kojima Productions have actually acquired the full rights to the IP. We know that 505 Games, who is actually acting as the publisher here, also did own part of the IP because they owned the rights to publish it on PC and a few other things. But it does sound like, as of yesterday, essentially, Kojima has full control over the IP.
So
And go
Xbox
on.
launch for Death Stranding 2, maybe?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? Because we know that that was announced as a PlayStation, like coming to PS5 next year. We don't know who is acting as the publisher of it right now. Like, is like if Kojima Productions are self-publishing it, for example,
Yeah.
you know, they very well could. Um, the other thing is though, even if it doesn't launch on Xbox, because at the moment it's only confirmed for PS5, I do think that this news pretty much confirms that at some point in the future, Death Stranding 2 will release on Xbox and most likely on PC as well, because there may be a pre existing agreement for some sort of exclusivity period.
Is this the first time that we've had a Sony proprietary engine on Xbox?
I believe so.
Because this is the Desma engine, is it not?
It is. It is. So, that's interesting to see. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think that this was, yes, okay, the game is 5 years old, but this is a big piece of news. Like,
Hmm.
nobody expected this, and it came out of nowhere. Like, they didn't even announce it in advance. They were really clever, Jeff, and not many people know this, but they didn't even propagate the achievements until after they had made the announcement of the game. So as it released, that was when they added the achievements to the back end so that
Yeah,
the
because
game
normally
couldn't even
people
leak.
can be like, "Hey, achievements were added for Death Stranding," and they because you have people that like
Hmm.
they data mine the shit out of
Yeah.
those things.
And we do, of course, Jeff. I wasn't reviewing games at the time, unfortunately, but Death Stranding is one of my favorite games, certainly of the last decade and perhaps of all time. But Jeff does have a full written review, and based on what I read of it yesterday, Jeff, you quite liked the game as well, right?
Um, yeah, like my last paragraph is Death Stranding is a game that most certainly is not mainstream or something that everyone will get on with, but it certainly is a game worthy of discussion and meaning. You don't need to understand every message or theme the game is composed of, but rather just take it in and focus on what you enjoy out of it. Finding that perfect path, helping in the construction of that highway you know is going to make your life easier and those around yours is something truly beautiful. I understand that many will see boredom in what the game offers, and that's fine. I understand totally why you may think that. But for me, I found an enjoyable piece in that boredom. While I wouldn't state that Death Stranding is the birth of a new genre, it certainly looks to form connections better than most actual multiplayer games have truly attempted to do. It's sad, it's happy, and it can be border on the bizarre, but Death Stranding is certainly special and is something that doesn't come around that often. Side note, Norman Reedus is the worst part of that game.
So I really agree that Death Stranding is a special experience, and what I will say is I didn't play much of the director's cut, but I will now because I've actually been provided a code for the Xbox version, so I'm going to check that out and see how it runs and all that sort of stuff. So thank you to 505 Games for the code.
I
I
think they
got
got back
that
to you before
as we
they
were
got back to you before
recording.
me.
um, but yeah, what I will say is at the price point of 50% off, I actually think this game is really worth checking out because it is something very unique and it might not be for you, but it also does have more than walking to it. Like this game, the laugh and the meme is, oh, this is a walking simulator. The difference is it's an actual walking simulator, so it
Yeah,
makes walking
and
into a game.
it is one of those games where like the first half hour you're going to be like, holy shit, this is boring because like it's getting you used to certain mechanics and certain
Yeah,
pathing and stuff of how you're getting
yeah,
around, and then once you start integrating with all of the bridges and all the things that you
yeah.
can do with other players, that's where it starts to get really really interesting.
And you do get to the point in this game where you can get vehicles and you can build roads and you can, you have weapons. Like there
And
is
you can
combat
deliver
in this
pizza.
game.
I mean, come
Yeah.
on, it's got Jeff Keighley in it as well, voiced by someone else, oddly.
Like honestly, there is a really interesting game here, and if you haven't played it, especially if you like Kojima's games and Kojima's style of storytelling, I do think there's a game to enjoy here.
Yeah.
And like I said, at the price point, I think it's an absolute steal. Obviously, it was, and this is quite a funny one. it was previously on PC Game Pass at one point. So, I do wonder whether there may be any future for it on console Game Pass at some point here in the future, given that they've had a similar deal in the past on the PC side.
I
But I
mean,
would say that,
they could be using
go
this
on.
launch as like a safety of like, let's generate as much profit as we can, and then in 3 months we'll put it on Game Pass.
Possibly, yeah, very possibly. But what I would say as well is because of the Xbox Play Anywhere situation, at 50% off, it's even more of a steal because if you buy it on Xbox, you will also own it on PC. So, it's a really good situation there.
Isn't that how Sony does their PC releases, Jordan? Isn't no? Okay. No, okay.
No,
All right.
unfortunately not, but they should. But of course, speaking of Kojima, he made one of my real favorite games of all time, which is Metal Gear Solid 3, and there's been a little bit of news involving that game recently, right?
Yeah, so 20 years after its original release, Konami has finally confirmed that the character Eva in Metal Gear Solid 3 was voiced by Little Mermaid actor Jodie Benson. In a newly released episode of Konami's Metal Gear Solid Legacy series, the publisher finally put 2 decades of internet speculation to rest by confirming that Benson was indeed the voice of the original character, and that she'll be returning for the forthcoming remake. Benson is known for lending her voice to Ariel, the protagonist of the Disney film The Little Mermaid. In the original game, Eva's voice actor is listed as Suzetta Monet, which Benson now says was a pseudonym based on her dog at the time. In the video, Benson claims that due to other projects she was involved in at the time, which were aimed at a family friendly audience, it was suggested for her that she may not have wanted to use her real name attached to a game that had adult themes that it dealt with. The various projects I am associated within my career, they're sort of family friendly, child based, things like that. So it was actually Chris Zimmerman, Salter, who that sat me down and said, hey, maybe we should change your name, she explained. Chris Zimmerman, Salter, served as the English voice director on several Metal Gear Solid games. The remake of the game will largely use the game's original voice recordings, but in the video, Benson, alongside Snake voice actor David Hayter, made reference to recordings some additional dialogue. How that will manifest in the game is currently unknown. So yeah, like this has been a bit of speculation for a very long time. People had
Hmm.
already kind of put everything, like people kind of were like, no, this is 100% fact. And
Yeah,
it turns out it is. Like it's pretty interesting that I mean, we've seen pseudonyms before. We've seen writers that have written like intense adult stories, writing like children books and teen fiction and stuff, and they use pseudonyms and stuff like that. So I mean, like that, it's happened before, but it's nice to finally have that news out. Um, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing like what this new dialogue might be. I know Konami had recently hinted that all the new dialogue that's being recorded is due to the button presses that you have to press.
yeah.
So it's hard to say exactly.
I mean, I'm gonna be interested to see whether the sort of remake remaster Metal Gear Solid Delta actually comes out this year or not, because at the moment they're still saying that it's meant to release this year. Although, we're getting to the middle of November here and there is no release date. So, maybe it's coming in December, but at the moment we only have one game coming in December, right?
Maybe they'll put the Metal Gear Solid 3 on the night of the Game Awards because they hate Keeley because Keeley loves Kojima. They're like, oh,
Maybe.
I can't watch the Game Awards. I'm too busy playing Metal Gear Solid. That's what's gonna happen.
Oh.
But
But yeah, because at the moment we only have one game coming in December, so maybe it will come in December. But December games tend to struggle a little bit.
I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see.
But yeah, we'll get on to this little bit of news here since we've also had some breaking news through Bethesda. Um, Todd Howard was initially against casting Troy Baker as Indiana Jones in the forthcoming Machine Games title. While the game will feature the visual likeness of Harrison Ford, who starred as the live action Indiana Jones in all 5 feature films. Troy Baker will be providing the voice. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Bethesda Game Studios executive producer Todd Howard and actor Troy Baker spoke about the casting process for the game. Baker claims that when he first met Howard via Zoom, Howard told The Last of Us star that he didn't want Baker in the role at first. We felt that this project and the time period it was set in, we cast a pretty wide net. After auditioning hundreds of people, Baker was chosen at the end. During the Zoom call, Howard told Baker, "I'll have you know, we did a blind taste test and people chose you every time." The title will be released first on the Xbox Series X and PC on December 9th, 2024, before heading to PS5 in spring of 2025. Bethesda has also announced that there's going to be a deep dive of a look at the game, essentially. That's going to be coming on November 11th. So there's going to be kind of the ability to kind of like let players kind of see a little bit more of it, because I know some people are still at odds with the first person part of it. But the Troy Baker thing, like he does pull off a pretty good Harrison. Like I still want to hear those like kind of deeper moments of the character and stuff that Harrison does, because like I think he's pulling off the talking parts of it well. So I kind of want to see where that goes. You know, it's a shame that they didn't get the guy who does the voice work for Captain Jack Sparrow in a lot of things, because that guy there, he does an amazing Harrison Ford. Like it's incredible, and you know, it is what it is.
And I mean, I can understand, you know, Todd Howard being against it initially as well, because as we've discussed before, there's nothing wrong with Troy Baker. But because he's in so many games, I think that for some gamers, it's almost got to the point where when you see his name involved in a game, it started to create a bit of a negative reaction, because it's kind of like, oh, this guy again. But as I said to you, Jeff, the reason he's used so much is because he's good at what he does.
Yeah, like he's one of the few actors, I think, in the industry that gets really involved at a creative level as well too. Like he's not just there to kind of fill a role. My main issue is when he is just using his voice.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like a lot of people don't know that he was the voice of the monstrous threat in the Medium.
Yes.
You know, so he actually got to do something there. So like with this one here with Indiana Jones, he's actually having to kind of tweak his voice a little bit to kind of fulfill the fantasy that he is Indiana Jones.
And you can hear that it's him in certain words.
Yeah.
But he's definitely doing something different, and I think that's probably a nice challenge for him, and it will probably create a really interesting performance as well.
Yeah. I just want actors to act. You know, that's the problem I have with Norman Reedus. It's like he's literally just taking the Daryl character from Walking Dead and he's like slapping on a blue jumpsuit. Like, you know.
So what I would say on this as well is I do have a request in for a code, but whether we get a code or not, I believe that both of us will actually be covering it because it's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And so Jeff will be reviewing it for us. I am on the review for Outer Haven as well. So you can look forward to those at some point in December, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but
and the same is also for Stalker 2 with codes and stuff, because it's hitting Game Pass in like 2 weeks or whatever. So
that game actually releases in less than 10 days now, I think.
I thought
so
12 days.
So
I want to say 12 days away. Yeah.
Nice. 12 days away.
All right. So let's push through a couple more news topics.
Go on, what have we got?
Scalpers looking to capitalize on the release of the PlayStation 5 Pro are struggling to make a profit due to its general ready availability. While there remains a handful of sellers trying to sell the console at a profit, eBay UK currently has numerous sellers listing the console for less than its retail price. A number of sellers currently have it buy now on sale for anywhere between $680 to $700, trying to recoup the losses there. While others have auctions currently sitting between $510 to $670. While these auctions will likely rise before they end, it seems less likely that they will surpass the console's $700 retail price. The situation appears to be the same in other countries, including Japan. Wataka Research Institute reports that while the console is now seemingly sold out at most Japanese retailers, some stores were selling it throughout most of the launch day without a need for reservations. One Japanese site named Mercari, sellers are reportedly selling the console for anywhere between 10 to 20,000 yen, more than the retail price. But Otaka Research Institute notes that because Mercari takes a 10% cut and shipping costs also have to be considered, this still results in many resellers either breaking even or taking a loss. So this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because Sony was kind of like, yeah, no, we're going to make enough of them, and scalpers are basically like, honestly, if you could buy one for $20 to $40 less or whatever the case is, it is what it is. But it is really funny to see scalpers on the losing end of this, especially surrounding the launch of the PlayStation 5 in general. When you have like news reports talking to like a 16-year-old kid who has 30 of them in his basement, he's like, I'm making bank. Like, it's so
I
fucking
think the interesting part of this story, though, is potentially the wider implications that maybe the PS5 Pro hasn't been kind of
flying
as
off the shelf.
popular. Yeah, it
Yeah.
hasn't been as popular as
IGN said
Sony
it's
might have expected.
but unessential.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, and I mean I do have one, which I'll speak a bit about later on. I was fortunate enough that my partner contributed towards the cost of it as a late birthday present for myself.
I
Otherwise, I
chose
wouldn't
rent.
have.
I chose rent instead of the PlayStation 5
Yeah,
Pro,
I mean
and my
for you,
landlord
it's
was
even more
appreciative of it as
expensive.
well.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, but it's the other thing of like, if you can get one of these a bit cheaper, it might be worth it because I had to pay £25 for the stand because I don't want this thing sideways. So, so yeah, I had to pay £25 for the stand,
It
and
doesn't
here
just
in the
stand up
UK,
because, like,
I mean, you can just stand it up. Obviously, it's a bottom heavy machine, if you like.
yeah.
But the problem is, while it is kind of it's steady enough. Put it this way: if Sugar came along and hit it, and it didn't have the stand on, it would fall over. Like,
See, like, here's the thing: why did they not make it compatible with the previous stand?
yeah,
And like, even like the faceplates that basically like they were selling and stuff, they have
only
different
half of the
connecting
faceplate is
parts.
yeah,
They look the same; they're the same thing, but the connecting parts inside them are different. So
yeah,
it's just like, it just reminds me of like when the PlayStation 4 was ending and Sony brought out that controller that had the back paddles, and people were like, "Oh
oh
my god,
yeah,
PlayStation 5 is gonna have back paddles," and then they did nothing with it.
yeah, yeah. That was funny. Like I don't know, and I'll speak more about the PS5 Pro when we get to what we've been playing and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I find this hilarious. I think it's a good thing because hopefully, and I mean it won't, but hopefully it at least dissuades some of these scalpers in the future. But obviously, there's also been the news. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Jeff, or but there has been a report that Donald Trump's reported tax rises and things might mean that consoles get a lot more expensive. So
yeah. Apparently, the rumor is that the PS5 Pro could actually inflate to about 1,000 US.
yeah, which is because this is the thing. If their costs of making these things go up, you better believe the cost of selling them will go up. And
But
that
that's
is
what all the
going to be
Trumps
a
wanted.
problem.
They wanted more expensive things. Like, I joked on Twitter, I'm like, the price of eggs are going to go up by about like $45, but they're going to put 13 eggs in the carton instead of 12. Nothing but value.
Oh wow, that's brilliant.
That tweet is live on Twitter. You can like it right now. All right.
Nice. Yeah, it's a crazy one, and I think that that's something definitely worth keeping an eye on because, as we know, gaming is already a very expensive hobby. I do think, as we've discussed in the past, the PS5 Pro probably sets the baseline for what the next gen consoles are going to be looking at in terms of price point. But if these tariffs go up, my god, consoles might die.
Yeah,
Like,
it is hilarious here.
yeah,
Speaking of consoles dying and alternatives to that, NVIDIA has announced that it plans to implement a limit to how long players can use its GeForce Now game streaming service. In a post on GeForce Now Reddit, the company announced that it's starting in 2025 that players will have an allowance of 100 hours per month. It says these limits will affect members of both its Performance and Ultimate subscription. Performance is $10 a month and offers 1080p streaming, ray tracing, and 6-hour session lengths, while Ultimate is $19.99 a month and offers 8-hour session lengths. At the start of next year, GeForce Now will roll out a 100-hour monthly playtime allowance to continue providing exceptional quality and speed, as well as shorter queue times for Performance and Ultimate members. This ample limit comfortably accommodates 94% of our members who typically enjoy the service well within its time frame. It goes on further through Video Games Chronicle. You can definitely check out the rest of the article.
yeah.
But here's the
I
dumb thing. That's
Go on.
literally just Dragon Age, the Veilguard.
I agree, but I do. So I'm kind of torn on this because I don't think it's a too bad limit. Like, for the vast majority of people who play games, they're not playing more than 100 hours in a month. Like, the vast majority of people, and I'm not talking about people like us, Jeff, like, it
Yeah,
would be no good for people like us. But for example, my friend, who's currently playing Dave the Diver, right? And he's played all the
good
PlayStation
game.
exclusives and all that kind of thing. You know, he will play maybe 10 to 15 hours a week if he's lucky. Most people do not have the luxury we
Yeah,
have.
but here's the thing though. GeForce Now is a subscription service, which means that you're making the intent of essentially gaming. It's not just casually coming into something,
Yeah,
right? Because if they're casually getting into something, they're probably just going to get a console. But with PC, with GeForce Now, you're intently searching for something to play through a subscription service.
that's
And if
true.
you're deciding to play Dragon Age the Veilguard on there and you're like, holy hell, this is amazing, and you're fulfilling those 8-hour chunks of whatever, you
Yeah.
aren't even going to be able to beat that game in the
No.
month that you have.
Yeah, that's true. That's very interesting. Um I think the kind of the scummy part of this, because the good part, if they're being truthful about it, is the reason they're doing this is to avoid raising the overall subscription price.
Yeah.
But then the scummy part of it is if you reach the cap and you want to play more, you have to pay. I think it's something like $5 or $10 for an extra 15 hours of,
Yeah.
of game time. And don't get me wrong, if you compare that to like going to watch a movie, that cost isn't too bad. But it's the fact that you're already paying for the subscription, and it's like,
See, why don't they do a unlimited
yeah,
for $20 more,
yeah, that's all they would have to do, right?
right? Because if you have the people that are absolutely diehard about this service, they'll pay it for an extra $20.
They will, yeah, they absolutely will. You're correct, and I think Nvidia's
And I
service
mean
is an interesting
$20
one.
Canadian. I'm talking
Yeah,
in my currency,
yeah, of course.
which is like
Um,
$4 American now.
um, and I am, what I would say as well is like their service is quite popular. We know this. Like in terms of considering it's cloud gaming only, I think there was a confirmation that they have something like 25 million users, which for a cloud gaming service is very good.
Yeah.
That's like a good number of people. And there's been a lot of tests at Digital Foundry and stuff like that, and on the highest tier at least, and even on the kind of medium 1080p tier, it does seem like you are able to get at least a console quality experience, if not a little better. And I think that, that's why this service is quite popular because, for example, if you choose the top tier, you of the ultimate tier, I believe they call it, where you do get the kind of the 8 hour slots for gaming, and you get higher resolutions and stuff like that. You are getting on that tier a better than console experience in terms of visuals. The latency tested matches console latency, and it's very reliable. Are you going to use it for competitive gaming? Probably not.
No.
But for single player gaming, it's a really good option, and I
Mm.
do think, especially with the cost of PCs and with the cost of like consoles potentially going up, and if consoles go up, the cost of PC parts will go up as well. I do think we could see this service growing. And I think maybe that's why Nvidia is doing what they're doing now, because they've said that this new structure will start on January the 1st next year, right? The one thing to say is if you're subscribed to the service before January next year, you actually won't have the cap as long as you keep your subscription up until the following year, right? So you'll get an extra year.
Okay, I had heard this story, and I wasn't 100% too sure if it was, and I just checked. Guess what game you get free with GeForce Now subscriptions?
I have no idea.
Let me read.
Okay.
Fight for Thedos' future as ultimate quality this fall, as new and existing members who purchase 6 months of GeForce Now Ultimate can get BioWare and Electronic Arts' epic RPG, Dragon Age the Veilguard, for free when it releases on October 31st.
Fair.
Like,
Fair. I
let's
mean,
give you a game that's longer than the time you get to play per month.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, as I just mentioned, if you do sign up before January, you will have no cap. So,
Yeah.
if you're looking to sign up to the service for Dragon Age, now is probably the time to do it.
Do it now. Do it now.
But why don't we move on here? Because I believe we've got some more news to go through
Yeah.
before we can talk about what we've been playing.
Yeah. So we got a couple things here. Take-Two has sold its indie publishing label Private Division. Now, we talked about this a while ago when they had shut them down. But it was announced that the move alongside its second quarter earnings resulted on Wednesday, but it didn't disclose who the studio was sold to or for how much. We recently made the strategic decision to sell our Private Division label so that we could focus our resources on growing our core business for the long term. Take TE CEO and personal demon Strauss Selnick told Variety. So as part of that transaction, I don't know if you can hear the fire trucks going and stuff. The buyer purchased substantially all of Private Division's existing and unreleased titles. However, Take-Two continues to support No Rest for the Wicked, which it launched in April in early access. Importantly, we're grateful to the contributions that the Private Division team has made to Take-Two, and we're confident that they'll continue to achieve success. So this is really nice because we were hoping that somebody was going to buy Private Division, that they weren't just going to shutter them, essentially. So this is great, seeing this kind of stuff, because I mean, Tencent just announced layoffs as well too.
Yeah. At the moment, we don't know who's purchased Private Division, right? So my question to you is, who do you think it is? Because I have a couple of ideas, like I have a couple of guesses, but who do you think it is, Jeff? If you were to guess.
I don't know. It's a mysterious buyer. Like, I wouldn't say it's Tencent because they just shuttered a team. I
I
wouldn't say
agree.
it's Embracer.
No, I agree.
Um,
I don't think it'll be EA because they have the EA Originals program. That I don't think they need Private Division.
I don't know. Like, it's weird. The first name that comes to my mind with no evidence or discussion around it is Ubisoft.
So I have two guesses. Ubisoft was one of them, and I know that Ubisoft are in a weird place right now. But actually, what a strong move it would be for them to have a division that can go out and find these smaller projects that Ubisoft can help to fund that are very different creatively from what their own teams might do, and that could really help the perception of their company.
Yeah, it'd be good
There
PR.
is, however, a very big and more obvious one, in my opinion, and it's just based on recent news mostly, but I think it could be Annapurna because
Yeah,
they
it could
lost
be.
their entire
It does
team,
kind of
right?
fit. It does kind of fit their stuff.
But they lost their entire team recently as well, right?
Yeah,
Didn't everyone leave? So it's kind of like they need a team to fill that role, and therefore, to me, that was where my head immediately went.
yeah,
It's going to
it
be
could be.
interesting to see, but I'm glad that Private Division lives on because they have worked on some. They've helped bring to life some very interesting games over the last number of years here.
Yeah. Speaking of Ubisoft, Ubisoft's recently released NFT-based RPG has reportedly been affected by what appears to be a game-breaking exploit. The game launched on PC last week and sees players assembling groups of 3 characters to battle against enemies in turn-based combat. The game's Web3 functionality is that each of these characters essentially functions as NFT and can be purchased with in-game currency or cryptocurrency. As noted by Twitter user Yanio, players of the company's Web3 competitive turn-based RPG, Champion Tactics: Grim War Chronicles, are reporting that it's impossible to play the game. The reason is because of one user whose name is usually either Shiler11 or Polestar111, who appears to be automatically winning every online battle. On the game's Discord server, players are complaining that when they start a competitive game online, they're matched with this player every single time, and then automatically lose to them without the match even taking place. One player pointed out that Polestar111 account was atop of the rankings with over 56,000 matches played. It's not yet clear how the player has been able to connect to so many games and automatically win them. This is based off a Twitter post here. It is absolutely absurd that a company in late 2024 have a game unplayable for days because one guy decided to ruin the game. I'm sorry, the level of incompetence here is alarming. Last time I saw Polestar 111 on the ranking, he had 56,000 matches. There are 10 of us complaining on here. Now picture the other thousands of players who are trying to play the game and probably will never come back here because the game is unplayable. A moderator on the game's Discord server posted on Saturday that the team was aware of the error, has banned the player, and was hoping to have a fix ready later today. However, some players have been continuing to report that they're still being matched with the player's account.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy, crazy.
NFT games are the future. Weren't they saying that like pretty much like a year ago?
True, true. I'm just gonna send you some news, Jeff, because we don't have it in the doc, but I do believe, in my opinion, this is reasonable sized news. So just
Sure.
give me a second here. I
Okay.
will
Well,
send it
you're
to you.
sending me that. I will do a quick news piece here.
Okay.
Warner Brothers Discovery has acknowledged that its gaming business isn't doing as well as it could, with the re-release multiverses highlighted as a recent disappointment. In the company's latest earnings call, CEO David Zaslav said that while he believed in the studio's business, which encompasses film, TV, and video games, which would see improved revenue in the future, he acknowledged that the video game arm is a current weak link. After mentioning upcoming film and TV projects, Zaslav said, but even in an industry of hits and misses, we must acknowledge that our studio's businesses must deliver more consistently. This applies to our games business, which we recognize is substantially underperforming its potential right now. We have 4 strong and profitable game franchises with Hogwarts Legacy, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones, and DC, most particularly in Batman. We are focusing our development efforts on those 4 core franchises with proven studios to improve our success rate. Zablov notably didn't include multiverses as one of the strong, profitable game franchises, and later in the fall, CFO Gunnar Weidensfeld blamed the fighting game for contributing to a further year-on-year hit of $100 million in the games department in Q3. Results were impacted by games, which we took another $100 million loss due to multiverses this quarter, bringing total write-down of the year to date over 300 million in our games division, our key factor in the studio's profit decline. So Multiversus, it had launched in early access 1 year, and then basically it took a year off, came back, slowed down the gameplay. Maximilian Dude was talking about it last night, that he hasn't even thought about Multiversus because when he came back to play it, it just felt slow, it just felt sluggish. And
Basically, they shouldn't have taken the year off. They
well,
sort of
the game did come back with a lot more improvements. But yeah, like they could have been continuing. I mean, it's early access. They were charging money
yeah.
during that. But yeah, I think that game, like it had so many players when it first came out, and then it took that year back, and it just wasn't able to capitalize on that momentum anymore. And the slowed down gameplay I know has distracted a lot of people as well too. All right, so let's bring up that news article that you just brought up here. Okay, so Amplitude is officially returning to independence after 8 fantastic years being part of the Sega family. Let's see here. We are thrilled to announce that our studio is officially returning to independence. Amplitude is now owned by members of the internal team, meaning that the future of our studio and games is staying in the hands of those who know them best. Being part of the Sega family and working with our team for the last 8 years has been an incredible journey. We've learned so much, we have grown in ways we never could have imagined, and have made great friends along the way. Our path now heads in different directions. We're parting ways on the best of terms, and we continue to cheer them on as they take on new and exciting things in the future. By returning to our indie roots, we're getting back to the heart of what drives us: creativity, innovation, and close-knit collaboration with our community. These values have shaped who we are, and from the beginning, we will lead the way forward in this exciting new chapter. Thank you for being with us every step of the way. Here's to a new beginning and to all the amazing things we'll create together. Jordan.
Yes.
Who is Amplitude?
Do you not know, Jeff?
I don't know.
Interesting.
Oh, wait, they're the team that made Humankind.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, yeah. For some apparent reason, I was thinking like Amplitude from the PS2 era is coming back. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's nice. I mean, like again, like it's good to see studios basically being able to kind of like leave the publisher and kind of be their own thing instead of just shuttering down completely, losing their offices.
Yeah, and I think that, look, the reason I wanted to put this story in here is, we've seen so many closures, as we mentioned earlier. Even PlayStation closed some studios recently, right?
Yeah.
But I think that there should always be an option for these studios to return to independence. Like,
Yeah.
there should always be some sort of pathway for them to return to independence rather than being shut down. And I understand that sometimes things get shut down or thrown in the bin to avoid tax payments and stuff like that. But for example, the Concord studio,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, okay, maybe they're not going to be able to afford to buy themselves back out of that situation, but they might have been able to get some sort of independent investment to allow them to at least continue working on the game and maybe re-release it as a free-to-play or in a different situation, right?
Yeah.
And instead, it was like, no, we're just going to shut you down.
Like they could have just moved on to another game and had a small little like team essentially work on Concord.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that I forgot to mention about that situation earlier is I think that Sony were a little bit silly, really, because they made that project cost a lot more than it needed to by buying the studio. What they should have done was fund the game, have them as a second party studio, and then if the game is successful, then you buy the studio.
Well, it's the same with like Hell Jumpers, like Helldivers.
Helldivers.
Like I think like there was still speculation that it could come to Xbox, but apparently there's like certain caveats that have to be made.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right.
it's a sad situation, but I'm glad to see that studios are still able to find their independence. And good luck to Amplitude.
All right. Our last bit of news is a big one. Nintendo has confirmed that the successor to the Nintendo Switch will be backwards compatible with the Nintendo Switch. In a post on Twitter, a message from Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa also announced that the further information about the successor will come at a later date. This is Furukawa, the message reads. At today's corporate management policy briefing, we announced that the Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor to the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the successor to the Switch as well. Further information about the successor to Nintendo Switch, including its compatibility with Nintendo Switch, will be announced at a later date.
Can you
So
say Nintendo Switch any more times?
this is Fukuoka. Yeah. Yeah, like I love their tweets. This is Miyamoto. Yeah, so here's some interesting things because people are like, oh yeah, it's gonna have backwards compatibility. What does that mean?
Yeah,
Well,
we don't actually know.
it essentially means that it's going to be compatible with the carts. So
Yeah.
that means that the carts that go in there, they're not cartridges, they're carts. So when the carts go into,
Although, hold on, we don't actually know that.
yes, we do. It's
So,
backwards compatible with Nintendo Switch. So it has to be compatible with the carts.
does it though?
Yes, to be backwards compatible, it has to be compatible with the carts. It can't just be digital. It would have to be the
Yeah,
carts.
true.
So it's going to basically use the same carts, or at least have a compatibility slot for those carts.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it could be a thing like PlayStation 3 where it had 75 memory card slots on the front of it, and then revised models got rid of it. So maybe the launch models of this new Switch will have the cart slot as
Yeah,
well.
maybe they'll have like an extra
Could
slot
be.
for the carts.
But it also means that the Joy-Cons and stuff that are on that console have to work because there's motion control games.
Yeah, true.
So it basically
Unless they
is,
also make accessories compatible
I'm not
somehow.
sure, but basically this news kind of confirms that we are just getting a new Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, how do you... So I agree with you. How do you think it will be received if when they say backwards compatibility, they do mean digital only?
I don't think they'll I don't think they'll do it that way. I know Nintendo likes to Nintendo, but I think
Yeah.
it's still going to be compatible with the carts. Or
I think it
what they
should
could
be.
do is they'll have like a my Switch is over there, otherwise I'd grab it. But you basically have the Switch and you basically have like a little tiny adapter that like clicks in the
Oh yeah,
USB slot and then has the
true.
card reader there.
Yeah, they could do something like that. It'll be interesting to see. And I'm sure that they're saying that news on the successor to the Switch will still come before
Before March.
April as well, which I find interesting. So, we'll keep an eye out for that news, and that will be one where as soon as it drops, as kind of if we're available, we will cover it as soon as we possibly can. Um because that sort of news is big news, right, Jeff? So
Yeah, I mean Nintendo like Nintendo is again like one of the biggest players in the game. Like the Switch is
yeah.
massively successful. So of course, like you don't want to fracture a subscription base with Nintendo
Mm.
Switch Online. So you're going to have that compatibility with the next.
However, the problem is Nintendo have always done Nintendo things,
Yeah.
and I think that's why this news is so surprising, right? Because nobody expected this. Let's be honest. No one expected any backwards compatibility because in
I
history,
agree strongly with that. I think
really,
I think everybody expected it. Nintendo like when rumors of the Nintendo Switch came out, Nintendo literally said that like we are this next console and stuff like that is in favor of looking after its customers.
interesting.
So I think
Interesting.
everybody expected backwards
So,
compatibility.
so why do you think then? Why do you think there has been this shift for Nintendo from we're just going to resell you the same game 7 million times to, oh, we're actually going to think about looking after you now?
Because the amount of the user base of the Switch is incredible.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
true.
they would have to, like, if you're like, hey, if we can please our entire user base or a select amount of our first, like, the people
Yeah.
the people who are going to buy the Switch too,
We almost have a monstrous success again, right?
we have to basically, like, because, like, like when they went from like the Wii to the Wii U, there was some compatibility, but there was a lot of confusion around everything.
Yes.
So if you can take that user base and translate them over to a much better thing, because people who had the Wii, there were people who, like, that console has the worst attachment rate in the history of gaming ever, because there were people who literally just bought the Wii and they just bought it for Wii Sports. To convince them to go to the Wii U, Nintendo couldn't, because the marketing behind it made no sense for them. The people are like, I already have a Wii. I already have it. I'm doing
Yeah.
bowling. Leave me alone. Like, there was that. But with the
Yeah.
Switch 2, if they or Switch 2, or if they're going to call, like, I don't know, Switch Next, like,
Super Nintendo Switch.
see, that to me is just that just to me is just a regular Nintendo Switch that looks like a Super Nintendo.
Interesting. Interesting.
Like, I don't know. I think honestly, if I had to put money on a name, Switch
Mhm.
Next to me is probably where I would go, because Switch
Interesting.
2 just,
Okay.
like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do because they have weird naming conventions. But speaking of the Nintendo Switch, Jeff, have you been playing anything on the Switch recently?
Yeah, I had an impulse buy, and I bought Brothership. Um, Mainly just because, like, I wanted to play a good Nintendo game, because, like, I'll be putting a review out for Echoes of Wisdom, and you'll get my meaning. That's saying that I wanted to play a good Nintendo game. Um, I played about, I'm gonna say, about an hour and a half. I've done the first island. The first island is kind of a gimme. I'm working through to the second island right now. Um, I've never actually played a Mario and Luigi title. I never played Bowser's Inside Story. I never played the other ones. Um, and this is my first foray into that. But I have heard tons of things about other games taking that type of gameplay. The where you basically do your attack, you hit the attack at the same time to do extra damage, and so on and so forth. And this so
Yeah.
far has that. And I'm very early, so I don't have a lot of the different mechanics, but combat is as simple as you think about it. You have Mario, you basically jump, you can hit jump again, you can tag to Luigi and then do a super jump into that enemy. You can dodge almost every single attack, and it's fairly simple. You basically just read where the enemy is going. And if you don't know, you can just hit jump with both B and A, and both Mario and Luigi will jump. It's charming. The only thing that I don't like is the game visually looks really good. I love what it looks like. I like the animation. I like what the characters look like. But they have this weird shading to them where, like, I don't know if I can bring it up here and stuff. But basically, if you see where, like, Luigi's
Oh,
arm
like the
goes into his
outline.
glove, all
Mm.
right, right where his glove and the green is, there'll be like a blue or dark teal kind of like blend between the glove and the arm. Mario's
Oh,
hat has like a purplish tinge around the sides of it. And when the characters, when an arm is like extended out and it looks thicker than it is, you see that blend, and it
oh.
it looks really odd. It's one thing I don't like. I'm gonna see if I can bring up a screenshot for you. Um, but
I mean, that
yeah,
is really strange, and if we can get a screenshot, I'll actually try and place one in the edit of the show
actually,
here if Jeff can't bring it up.
if you can see this, this is the character artwork for the game. And if you
If you
look
can
at
send it to me,
Mario's,
Jeff, I'll bring it up so people can see it.
yeah, if you look at like where
Pretty
Mario's
cool.
arm is, and like even the back part of his hat, you can see that it's got like shading to it. So the artwork looks exactly like the gameplay.
Let's have a look.
Um,
I'll grab this for you here. Give me a second while I grab this image. And hopefully...
oh, this one's even better. This one's even better. Yeah, this one is like way better at conveying my issue with it. But you can see like this like shading that goes from where the character detail kind of ends. And it
Nice,
just
nice.
it really stands out in a bad way. And that's the only thing that I can honestly say so far in my first like hour and a half to 2 hours of the game that
Here we go. Let
stands
me
out
just
as
grab
being an
this
eyesore.
image.
But
Grab this image so that you can see
yeah,
it, so that you can understand what Jeff is talking about here.
but
Because
basically
it
like
is bad. Like, this isn't good. It doesn't
like
look
Mario
good.
and Luigi, they basically travel to like a new world that the islands have been split up. So
Yeah.
you're on a boat and you sail around the ocean, and you basically then use a catapult gun to like launch yourself to a new island, solve its issues, get the connector plug, and then bring it back to the ship to
Yeah.
unite this world. And that's the general
So you
storyline.
so you will not be able to see us for a moment, but I'm just going to bring up the image for you, which is
Yeah.
here.
So if you see by his gloves and his hat, it's like this purple tinge. That's in the
Yeah,
game all the time.
that's crazy. That's really weird. And I can
Yeah.
see the kind of teal color on Luigi as well there.
Yeah, and like you see that all the time. Like it's very distracting because there's nothing to cause the lighting to be like that. So
That's
sometimes the
weird.
characters will be overly dark or light when there's no real need for it. It almost seems like some levels that are super bright suddenly go overcast.
Yeah,
Um,
very
but that's the only
strange.
part. That's the only part of the game that I can say is like not impressing me so far. But the gameplay seems nice. I like running around almost in an isometric kind of view.
Yeah,
But so far, the game is really charming. I do like it so far. Again, I'm super early. You can get like different pants and gloves, which is like your equipment, essentially. I still find it funny that like, you're from a strange new world. Oh my God, here's mushrooms. We have your mushrooms here for sale. You know, like that part's kind of weird where like all the Mario aesthetics somehow
yeah,
exist on another world.
yeah.
But
Uh, that's
so
fair.
far,
I
it's pretty
mean,
good.
that's good. I'm intrigued to hear more of it when you play more. I'm gonna go next before you talk about other things because you've been
Sure.
playing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But I have jumped into, as I said before, a bit of the PS5 Pro. I haven't had much time to tinker with it yet because I wasn't fortunate enough where we are not big enough. Even the Outer Haven isn't big enough to get one of these things early. I did purchase it myself, so it arrived yesterday, and I spent many hours installing a lot of games to sort of test out on it. And the Outer Haven have given me a little bit of a budget to pick up a few other titles as well that are pro enhanced because
Yeah, Stellar Blade apparently runs like slick as hell on that thing. And like,
yeah,
if
so
anything was to make me want to get like a PS5 Pro, it would be to play Stellar Blade in like way better graphical fidelity.
yeah. So Stellar Blade may be one of the games that I actually pick up and test. I haven't yet, but I may
Do it
well do that.
because I need you to play it before we decide our game of the year.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
need it on the
Okay.
list. It needs points.
Talking about it though, one game I have tested so far, and I didn't play on PlayStation previously, but Alan Wake 2, I was fortunate enough to get sent a code for that. So thank you to the team at Remedy for sending that over. And it's an interesting case because the game looks significantly better. There's added ray tracing to the game in performance mode. It is targeting 60 FPS, but at the moment it's not quite able to hold that 60 FPS, which is creating a couple of problems when playing the game. However, like I said, the added ray tracing is a significant visual improvement for the game over the base PS5. So, if they can kind of patch the performance and improve things a little bit there, Alan Wake 2 looks really, really good. Another one that I've played, and I only tinkered with for sort of 10 or 15 minutes just to see how it kind of looked, because I'd heard a lot of good things about it in previews and stuff, was F124, which is obviously Formula One racing. And yeah, they've got a couple of modes. One does 120 FPS now on console, which is, fantastic
And
for
that's
a
only if
racing
you
game.
have a 120 hertz TV as well. You won't be able to
Of
even access
course.
that mode if you just have a typical regular TV, which 90% of
Yes.
most gamers are basically playing with.
Of course. So if you have the capable display, you can play in 120 FPS now. But the other option, which is going to be more applicable to most people, I would say, is that they now have um, a mode that adds a lot of ray tracing features to the game while playing. So during gameplay at 60 FPS, and the output resolution is 4K. They're using PSSR, which is the upscaling tech, to get there. So it is being upscaled. But based on what I'm seeing, like, unless you really know what you're looking for, you're not going to see a significant difference between native 4K on the standard PS5 and the upscaled version. So you're not really losing image quality, and what you're actually gaining is a lot of additional ray tracing, which makes the game, this game in particular, look significantly better. Like it almost looks like the high-end PC experience, but just running at a slightly lower frame rate, because obviously on PC you can push things up to much higher frame rates if you have the capability to do so in your hardware. And then yeah, I did purchase one game today that I thought I was going to check out because I know it had some issues on console, and Jeff can speak a bit more to this than I can because I'm sure you played it, Jeff. And that was Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, I mean, I had it for PS5 at launch. EA supplied me a code. The first game I've pretty much got through EA. And honestly, I didn't really have that many problems. I
That's
kind
good.
of lucked out. I think there were some technical issues, but nothing that's really coming to mind. But I know the PC version was borked similar to
Yes,
Jedi
and the
Fallen Order.
PC version is still broken. So when
And
I
then they
test
decided
that
to
out,
release it on PS4 and Xbox One for some god knows reason, and it looks like ass.
so
Sorry.
yeah, I'm gonna try that out on the PS5 Pro because that is officially Pro enhanced
Yeah.
as well. Um,
Yeah, I saw
because
Maximilian Dude playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth all last night.
yeah,
And it was so funny because he's like, yeah, like let's turn off all these settings and see what it looked like on the regular base PS5, whatever. And he's like, oh, I thought it looked worse than that. So like, I don't know if there's like a memory type of thing where we're trying to make the pros sound more impressive than it is.
mhm. I think it also depends on the mode you play in, right? So Final
Yeah,
Fantasy VII Rebirth is another one that I'm going to test. I
yeah.
haven't been able to yet just because I was installing so many games that they, they just took a really long time. Because
And
that
the
is one
the
thing to
the
see.
PlayStation hard drive has like what, like 700 meg hard drive. It's like
So
super
so the
tiny.
standard one does.
Won't
The
even hold a
Pro
game.
actually comes with a 2 terabyte.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice. That's good.
so yeah, so there's a significant
But is
improvement
it
there in terms of
actually two
storage.
terabytes or is it like rounded up
So
like the PlayStation
so
does
it
with its?
it goes so usable space after the operating system is 1.89 terabytes.
Okay, that's not too bad because I know PlayStation like 5 has like what, a 800,
They
like
took like half of the memory or something, right?
it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I have like 7 games on that thing and that thing's like, install something please for the love of God.
So yeah, I am gonna try out Rebirth, but my understanding is, and shout out to Digital Foundry because they did an amazing PS5 Pro review video, and they're going to have more coverage in the future.
Yeah.
But if you played in the quality mode on the original PS5, which was capped at 30 FPS, the image quality you got was actually quite good. And as I understand it, is potentially slightly better than the PS5 Pro image quality, right? If you're comparing it to the PS5 Pro's what they call, I forget the name. There's a name for it, and it's basically there's a certain mode on PS5 Pro that you can activate, which bumps that frame rate up to 60 FPS because they're upscaling the resolution.
Yeah,
But
they're
the
using
idea
tesla.
is that mode looks significantly better than the performance mode. So if you played in performance mode on PS5, you are going to get a much cleaner image on PS5 Pro while still playing at the same frame rate. So there's definitely a case there for it being a better experience. But I think that that's one of the problems with these Pro consoles that I wanted to kind of mention here is if you're going into the PS5 Pro expecting a massive change in visuals, you might get the occasional game where that is the case. For example, I know Jeff mentioned Stellar Blade earlier, and I do know that in Stellar Blade there is a mode where because they're using PSSR upscaling, they essentially the image looks a lot more clean, even though the resolution isn't really different because the anti-aliasing used is a different technology
Yeah.
than they use in their own version, right? So therefore, it looks like a cleaner image, it runs at a good frame rate, and all those kind of things. But it's one of those things where the effect on the image isn't so much the selling point here. The selling point of this console is having a better image quality in performance mode.
Yeah, like it's not going to improve textures because those generally require the developer to change the textures. It's basically just this console is generally just about the performance of the game that's already there.
And in some cases, this console won't even help that because if you're playing a game that had CPU based issues, the CPU in the PS5 Pro is exactly the same CPU as the standard
Yeah,
PS5. So therefore, you're not actually getting any additional CPU performance. So, for example, in if you played Baldur's Gate 3 on PlayStation 5, if you go to one of the bigger cities, like if you're in Act 3 or something like that,
yeah.
and you actually go to Baldur's Gate, there can be frame rate
Spoilers.
issues.
I didn't know Baldur's Gate was in Baldur's Gate.
There can be frame rate issues while traversing around that city, for example. That's one
Yeah,
of the hotspots of the game. And on PS5 Pro, Digital Foundry tested this. That is still the case. And although you do see about a 10% improvement to frame rates,
yeah,
because the CPU is the limiting factor, you're still not going to get a locked 60 FPS or anything close to it, really. Um, but then the other part of the PS5 Pro, which I think a lot of people aren't aware of because Sony haven't shouted about it that much, is there can actually be big gains in older games that are PS4 or something like that because they do have an image enhancing mode for all PS4 games, which essentially makes text and things like that a lot sharper. Um, and it improves the sharpness of the image by upscaling. But even if you don't turn that on, something that Digital Foundry have discovered is that the game boost feature of the PS5 Pro essentially gives full power of the machine to every PlayStation 4 game as well. So if you had a PlayStation 4 game that was struggling to hit 60 FPS previously, it's
Yeah,
probably going to do it now.
which is probably the closest we're ever going to get to Bloodborne remaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
so yeah, there's so there's definitely, based on my limited testing so far and based on the testing I've seen others do, it's an interesting one, right?
yeah,
Because
like
the
but
tech the the tech in the PS5 Pro and what they have done is worth the money,
and it
but
should
it's
have
what
been the tech that was in the PS5 to begin with, because
it
it
should have
gives
been.
the promises of what they were kind of do, what
Yeah.
they were trying to do before.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. They don't have 8K on this box, right? But if you have an 8K television, there are actually 8K modes available in several of these games.
Yeah,
Like,
and
so
like,
they're finally delivering that as well.
and I agree with Maximilian Dude as well too. Is like, this console should have launched with some major game that made you go, "This runs way better on the PlayStation 5 Pro," like
Yeah.
just astronomically better.
And that's why I would say, based on my testing so far, it's one of those where it's like, if you don't have a PlayStation yet, then maybe this is the one to buy,
Yeah,
because you are going to get the best console performance on the vast majority of games. Although, weirdly, games that are CPU limited are likely to run better on the Xbox, because the CPU on the Xbox Series X specifically is actually a more powerful CPU than you have in the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. so
yeah.
so different games will still run better on
Yeah,
different
but at the end
platforms.
of the day, optimization is still the main factor of what's actually important, because like you can have a
Absolutely.
more powerful this and that, and
Absolutely. And
yeah,
but what I'm excited to see is, in the coming year, 2 years, 3 years, is as these games now come out and they've had more time to work on their PS5 Pro versions, I do think we will see bigger differences between the base PS5 and the PS5 Pro, kind of like we did with the PS4 Pro back in the day, and with the Xbox One X. Because remember, at the moment, there are only 50 enhanced games, right?
yeah,
But as time goes on, there will be more and more. And at the moment, they are enhancing games which were not originally designed for this system. And therefore, when something like Ghost of Yotai comes out, or when, or even like, what the funny thing is, when Indiana Jones comes to PS5, the PS5 Pro is probably going to be the best way to play it on console. So, so it's one of those, because there is that other thing that every game that now releases on PlayStation has to have a a PS5 Pro enhanced mode. Essentially, it
okay,
has to be compatible with the PS5 Pro. So yeah, there's some interesting things there. I do like the machine. I've changed my opinion a little bit, because I do think that if you're someone who cares about the absolute best performance, the PS5 Pro, and you're a console gamer and you can't afford a PC, the PS5 Pro is worth the money. However, for the step up that you are getting over the base PS5, is it worth $700, £700, or in Jeff's case, more than $1,000 Canadian? Probably not, right? Or certainly not at this point in time. But as Jeff mentioned just now, as Maximilian Dude said, once we get to the point where there are those games that you go, oh my god, this runs so much better on the Pro, I do think that this system will become more worth the money and more value for money spent over time, right? And I think that's the same thing really that happened with the PS4 Pro, where over the years following the PS4 Pro's release, a lot of the games performed a lot better on PS4 Pro compared to the base PS4.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to come down to kind of like what the developers are going to kind of do for these consoles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. But, I will report back when I've had more time to test it. The other thing to say is I will also have a full kind of written impressions on the Outer Haven at some point. I'm not going to do a review because I think that scoring consoles is weird. um, but I will have an impressions piece and I will talk about some of my experiences there. So make sure you're looking out for that in the next sort of week to 2 weeks, depending on what happens with my Dragon Age save as well. but what else have you been playing, Jeff? Because you have, before we get to Dragon Age,
Yeah.
you have played something a bit smaller.
Um, Speaking of smaller, I have been playing Metal Slug Tactics. I reviewed that. I got code through the team there. Um, the game is absolutely amazing, but if you are to basically play this game, I recommend playing it on PC, PS4, 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X. Don't play it on Switch and don't play it on Steam Deck. And that is because if you basically type in Metal Slug Tactics, tiny font, it is the most complained thing about that game. The font is so incredibly tiny that I could not play it on Steam Deck at all. It's playable on Steam Deck, plays beautifully, and in fact, the performance on Steam Deck is better than it is on PS5. I had stutters like crazy, but playing it on PC, it was flawless except for the font. The font is
Yeah.
incredibly tiny. That needs to be fixed, and I'm pretty sure that they are going to be working on that because it's the smallest font I've ever seen in the game. The game itself, however, is fantastic. The art is absolutely incredible. The tactics parts of it, like the game is so fun to play. It's a roguelike. You basically have your three heroes. You basically go through a couple stages, fight a boss, and then move on to the next biome, and then you try and get to the bad guy, and then you beat him, and then the cycle refreshes as you get new characters added and new weapons. You use the money that you earn to basically unlock new things that can appear during runs, typical roguelike stuff. But the game is super fun. It's got a nice charm to it. The tactics and stuff is fine. Like you basically like how it maintains the Metal Slug stuff because that's a running and gunning type of experience. It doesn't feel like it's built for tactics. But what it does is that you have a maximum range that your character can move, and if you move to that maximum range, you'll actually gain um, like the currency to use your special attacks as well as a shield, which will then deflect most of that damage. And it's available on Game Pass, so definitely try it out. But yeah, you have your cover stuff, which is identified with blue, and then you have other cover that doesn't work as well, but it can kind of block some bullets and stuff. You have objectives that you can do to get more money and more bullets. So, for example, if you have run out of all of your special ammo and you're about to take on a boss, if you do the level beforehand that allows you to get a reload, you'll want to do the objective in that level as you win it to then earn the reload because then you'll reload your ammo going into the boss and have a better chance. The character art is fantastic. I say in my review, if this guy ever did a Metal Slug comic, I would pre-order it right now. The art looks so good. The pixel artwork that's really nice. Like this is the first big game that this team has made. They've made some other small indie games, but this is the title that I think is going to put them on the map. But yeah, that font is something else. But yeah, Metal Slug Tactics. It's available on Game Pass. Try this game. It is unbelievably good.
Fair.
Um,
Fair.
yeah,
We've got about 15 to 20 minutes left here. So why don't we finally talk about Dragon Age? I'll be
yeah,
very quick in my uh kind of thoughts because there's just a few things I want to point out. Firstly, I really, really like the game, or at least what I've been able to play so far. I do think there are some issues, so I'll kind of mention those as Jeff goes a bit more in depth. But I chose to play as a rogue. Um,
same.
Interesting, interesting.
I always go
I
rogue.
just
I hate warriors and mages and stuff. I just find them boring.
fair, and I just like the range that that gives me. Just yeah, I'm an elf rogue, and I'm kind of focusing on the Vel Ranger type stuff. So I've got an interesting, or I had an interesting build, I should say. Um, and I had got to the point in the game where I wasn't far past the point that I just got all of the companions.
Yeah,
So and that's a sizable way into the game, really.
yeah. I think I'm probably about 10 or 15 hours past that.
Yeah. This is a long game. It's a big game. There's a lot to do. There's some brilliant companion quests, and I would say that that's actually the thing that has kind of impressed me the most so far. Is this is BioWare back? Like, is it a,
Yeah,
is it a perfect game? No, there are issues, and I think there are some choices they give you that don't seem to really have much impact at all. um, but then who knows? Because I haven't finished the
I
game
think
yet,
it's
right?
tough to make all those choices really mean something because then you're fracturing the narrative off into these like infinite moments
Yeah, for
where the game
sure.
would just be so
And then
expensive. Like,
on the
you know,
on the gameplay front as well, my thoughts are I really like the combat, but I do think it gets quite repetitive.
I think
So
if you stick to the same skills,
yeah,
it definitely does because like you can work your way around the board and unlock one thing and then move on to another thing and stuff. So
yeah.
I have kind of a mixture of the ranger and like the trap type of thing where I'm
Oh,
throwing out
nice.
the trap and whatnot. And
Nice. So,
but
going into more detail then, Jeff, because you're better at that than me, uh, for people that don't know, what is Dragon Age the Veilguard, and how does it, and more importantly, how does it play differently than people might expect?
um, Dragon Age basically started out as kind of a tactical based RPG, and it sold well, but EA definitely wanted them to kind of ramp up the action a bit. So Dragon Age 2 brought that. However, it brought a lot of repetition in that game, and then they basically learned from that and they worked on Inquisition. And Inquisition was fantastic. It was probably my favorite of the Dragon Age games. And this one kind of ramps it up even more to be an action-based RPG. It's very similar in a lot of the ways of like Kingdoms of Amalur, like in terms of like how the combat kind of feels. Um, Veilguard is the continuation of that story. So you will have characters from previous games show up. There's one that I really enjoyed showing up. There's one that has been a staple of the franchise, and she's in some of the marketing materials. She's basically out there. I'm repping her right now. And yeah, you even get to like redesign or attempt to design your Inquisitor from the Inquisition. I couldn't make my character because they didn't allow for like white pale skin because I made this kind of like almost like gothic dark elf, and it just doesn't allow you to kind of really do that. So I made just another character that looked really interesting, and you basically play as Rook, who is kind of like the rookie. He's kind of like the new character that comes in to
I do have a,
kind of
I
solve an
do have
issue.
a question, Jeff.
Yeah.
While we're talking about um, sort of characters and the look of different things, how do you feel about the art style in this game? Because it's not full on realism, right?
No,
It
like here's the, for me, the art design is absolutely fantastic. I just wish they committed to a little bit more of clarity around certain things. Because you take a look at like Fortnite, which has, I wouldn't say a similar art style, but it commits to making those characters look as high graphical fidelity as possible. And you don't get that here with Dragon Age. Like there are some characters like Tosh looks amazing. Her facial animation is so good. The little smirks, the things that she does,
yeah,
sorry, the things that they do. My apologies, I misspoke there. Um, but basically, with certain characters and stuff like that, they look Some of them look fantastic. Like my Rook looks great. The facial animation is fairly okay, but then you get other characters. Just bringing up the character names here as well too. What's his name? Emmerich. Emmerich is this Vincent Price character who I hate Vincent Price characters. That's why I hate every single game that's like, we have Doctor Strange. No, you just have Vincent Price. Like at least Benedict Cumberbatch is not trying to do the Vincent Price thing. So like I don't like Emmerich at all because I don't like that type of
Fair,
character.
fair.
But his facial animation is so dead.
Yeah. That's fair. One thing that really stood out to me graphically about the game, and I am playing on PC, so on console it might be slightly different,
Yeah.
although this is an EA game, and I know, and I've mentioned this before with their sports titles, and people laugh at me, but I think now they're seeing it. EA have the best hair tech in the industry.
Yeah,
Like,
and you have so many hairstyles, and some of them look so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the hair looks really, really good, and it's a I think they call it the strand system, and yeah, whatever they're doing to kind of make the hair for these games and for their sports games and everything else they do, it is the most realistic looking hair in the industry, I think, because you can actually see individual hairs, and the way the light reacts with the hair is more realistic, and the way the hair moves around. Like, if you've got certain hairstyles in this game, you're like running around and your hair is just moving all over the place. But it's like,
I don't know if you want to drop this over on the overlay. So like this is what my character
yeah, I could have a.
is
I
here. Oh,
could
I
have.
put it in thumbnails. I'll delete it once if you grab it, if you want to.
Okay, give me a second here, and I
Yeah.
will grab it for
Yeah, the
you.
hair tech is really, really good. Even like the fabric tech is actually really decent as well too. I got a costume that
Yeah,
has like these two
you can
draped little
delete that now as
capes
well,
that
Jeff.
run around.
I will get that up now. Hopefully, it will come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
1
Got to
second
delete it from
here.
thumbnails just so it's not in the right.
That's fine. That's fine. Let me
Yeah.
just
But
add this in
yeah, like
again.
there's so many hairstyles. Like honestly, I think about every like mission or so I go in and grab a different hairstyle because like right
Mm.
now I've got like the shaved one side and the hair coming down.
So here we go. The image is just uploading. Give me a second, and
Yeah.
you will see Jeff's character now.
Kind of
There it
based
is.
my character off of there's an actress on Black Sails.
Okay.
It kind of accidentally went that way, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try and work this. And so I went basically that way. But there's tons of hairstyles. Like you can see on there, like the scroll bar basically still allows for like tons. I think there's 40 hairstyles, and they're all
Yeah.
good hairstyles. Like you get
Yeah.
some games that look
But
absolutely stupid.
if you look
You can
there,
drop the image now, or if you're done.
I will, yeah. If you
Yeah.
look there though near the ears,
Yeah.
like you can see the individual hairs, and that's what I was talking about. The way
Yeah.
that you can actually see individual hairs, which is not something we see in very many games. Like a lot of hair doesn't look realistic at all, right?
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah. Like
very impressed by that.
there are some characters that look really good. I will say that what's his name here? Hold on, I need to go back to where I had the character names on here. Lucanus to me almost looks action figure-y, just because his hair seems more like intent on the design. It's kind of like like when some games do a goatee or whatever, it almost looks like it's just like a plastic piece clipped to the chin. So his hair doesn't look nearly as good. Like there are some little drawbacks and stuff. I think Harding looks awful. I think her character model does not look that great. Solus looks good. I think Varric looks fine. Nev looks really good. I just find that she looks very stocky in a lot of ways.
Very
Um,
stalky.
like she just, I don't know, like she looks smaller than she is.
Oh yeah, no, I see it. Like now that I think of it, you're actually right. She does.
Yeah. But no, like there's a lot of like really cool, like Balara. I love her face. It's so expressive. She looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like Davrin, like the voice actor controversy aside and stuff like that, like he looks
Mhm.
fine. He's very typical in terms of like kind of his design.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tosh is um, the character that I romanced. They're fantastic. I love
Nice.
everything about their quest and like their facial animation. And like there's a part where like they're talking about like Solus and some of his memories and like people he knew or whatever and like that. And Tosh is like, yeah, they're doing it. And like, no, like, but yeah, they be sure there was like love. It's like, yeah, no, they're doing it. Like it's so funny. And it's like, even like when you like their like abruptness is really good. I love the
Yeah.
character. It's so
Yeah.
funny because like when you
So,
start
so
the
Jeff,
romance, she's like, "Yeah, are we gonna have sex or what?" Like,
so Jeff, you have 5 minutes left here. So tell me 5 things that you really like about this video game.
I don't know if I'll be able to do five. I'll just do basically a general statement and see if I capitalize on all of them.
Okay.
Um, Most of the side quests are actually fairly decent and kind of expand out the map. I feel that it's using the map that it has really good because you've got all these individual biomes, which are these large open kind of worlds. But what
Almost
I
like
like about it
Destiny,
is,
right?
huh?
Almost like Destiny. It's kind of like
Well, I mean, this game originally started out as a co-op experience, so it's meant to be this thing where you basically use the Illuvians or whatever, the doors, to basically just teleport to a new area, and then you
yeah.
expand these little areas. You find chests, you solve
And
puzzles.
is a
Some of them are
clever
like
way of
moving lasers and shit.
repurposing is a clever way of repurposing that original design
Yeah,
once they figured out it wasn't working as well.
yeah,
So
and
credit to the team.
the one thing I like about it is the game does not waste your time or have really filler. So if you want to simply teleport somewhere or teleport across the map, you can do that. There's not these long treks that you have to make. You can literally just teleport to like these 6 or 7 nodes that are around each of the maps. Um, it's really nice. Like the combat feels incredibly sharp and focused. I like the fact that I can like you can like hold the arrow button and then jump and they'll do this like slow motion thing and they'll fire off the arrow automatically, or you can just manually do it. There's tons of little things you can do. There's tons of outfits and costumes that are perks. There's vendors that you can basically like level up to get better gear and better cosmetics. There's a level up system for improving your weapons and gear and adding like gems to them essentially, or like these abilities to them that like grant you more attack power on lower health and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
The story gets in some incredibly tense and fun moments in terms of like how threatening this force is, because like you go to stop Solus and like something kind of happens and Solus almost becomes like this like voice of reason of like this is how you're going to do it, and obviously he has an agenda. But like even like someone like Loki and stuff is like, or they'll kind of work within the reins of helping as long as it benefits them. And a
Yeah.
world without those elven gods is what Solus wants. That's what he wanted in the first place. So if he can use you to his means, of course he's going to share all this information. So it's a beautifully handled game. I love the dialogue. I love the characters. I know everyone's saying like, "Oh, Dragon Age is woke." I'm like, play the first fucking Dragon Age. That is way more woke than even
Yeah.
this one was. So
And
like,
also who cares?
who fuck care? Like, they're not even using woke correctly. That's not even a term for what that is. That's just a scapegoat term that they used. We have a word now. Like, fuck
Yeah.
off. Like, it's so stupid. This
Yeah.
game is
So
absolutely great.
the game is brilliant. If you had to point to something maybe that you're not so keen on about the game,
Facial
what would that be?
animations. That's
Okay.
honestly the only part of this game that I can be like, that needed work,
Okay.
because combat is absolutely fantastic. Exploration is absolutely fantastic. I think the story is really good. I think the characters are great. But the facial animation for a lot of stuff kills me when
Yeah.
Tosh can express emotion within 2 phrases and Emmerich is just like looking as dead as the bodies he has on his slab.
Yeah, that's fair.
Manfred. Manfred has more emotional range than Emmerich. And he just goes,
Um, well, that kind of sums up how we both feel, I think, because we're pretty much on the same page with the game. Um, I obviously have still quite a lot more to play. I'm waiting for my save file to be fixed. And while I did have that technical issue on PC, I think it's worth mentioning that if you play on PC, the game is very scalable and one of the most well optimized games of this year in terms of performance. So you're gonna have a good
Yeah,
time on
Digital
PC.
Foundry, I think their headline for their video was like a PC technical masterpiece.
Yeah, it's very, very good. And like I said, outside of the losing my save and then having some kind of small following issues after that,
So it crashed
um,
during the save.
yeah, yeah.
That's so weird that your other saves then don't work.
That's what I mean. Yeah, is I don't even know what happened really, but thankfully, EA are trying to source it out for me, and if
They've
not,
got the
I
whole
have to
team on
play.
it. All the deal they just announced in this news post that all future DLC has been delayed because of your save patch.
um,
They even
but
put your
if
name in
not,
there
I'll just
too,
play
which
the
was
entire game again because it's great. So it just
do it.
means that my review, which I'm doing for the Outer Haven, will be delayed as a result of this save situation. However, Jeff, I know that you're planning to finish the game today at the time of recording, right? So
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea where I am in the story. I probably still have another 30 hours. I have no idea. But I will be like it's 10 a.m. right now, so pretty much from like 10:30 to probably 10:30, I'm going to be blasting through that. I'm going to be taking a little bit of time to play this as well. I also got review code for another game that I believe is out already. Um, but I'm also playing another game that's on Steam Deck that apparently is about 2 or 3 hours.
so
I won't
Jeff's
say who it
playing
is or where
7
it's
million
from.
things again.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like if when developers are like, hey, we've got this game, would you like to try it out? I mean, I even got another what is it? The IREM collection or whatever. It's got a bunch of like Metal Slug
Oh,
looking
okay.
kind of shooters and stuff on Switch. I
Interesting.
got code for that as well too.
And also, we are coming up to Game of the Year time. So something people won't know is around this time, you often get companies that will send you kind of messages and they'll be like, oh, do you want to try out any of our games for your consideration this year? Like things that you haven't played. Like, you might get a PR agency saying, these are the games we released. If you need any codes for your consideration of Game of the Year, please let us know. And
Yeah,
I
and I
still
love
have a
how the
few
one that
things
I
to
keep
play.
getting the most, where they're like, "Hey, let us know if you need any codes," was the one where I like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have any codes right now," and I had to buy the game. So now it's kind of like, "Yeah, oh, okay, I already have it. Thanks."
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I have a couple of things to play. Never. I'm still gonna be playing that at some point, and that's why
Stellar Blade.
there Stellar Blade possibly. We'll see how that goes. Because things are busy at the moment, but because things are busy and we still both have things to play, because if I have to play Stellar Blade, you have to finish Infinite Wealth, Jeff.
Oh, that's probably not happening. That's a really long game.
so
We'll see.
so
We'll see.
but yeah, depending on our situation, what may well happen is we may do our Game of the Year episode a couple of weeks later this year compared to when we did it last year, because we want to make sure we've had as much time to play as many things as possible so that we can give you the best list, because obviously the way that we do it is a point system based on our top 10. We both give you our personal top 10s, and then we have it based on a point system. And that's why last year Resident Evil 4 was actually our game of the year, even though it was not top of either of our lists.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like honestly, I think Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2 might be the one, because that's
Yeah.
going to be fairly high on my list.
Yeah, so there's gonna be some interesting discussions around that when the time comes. Um, but if you want to stick with us till then, please make sure you subscribe, like, of course, follow analogstickgaming.com because Jeff will have 7 million reviews out between now and then. um,
Yeah, like the reviews right now, if this episode goes out today,
yes.
we put out reviews for A Quiet Place, A Road Ahead. Jordan has done that as well. We put out Shadows of the Damned Hella Remastered, which is not really a remaster at all. Metal Slug Tactics, Metro Awakening, which is the VR attempt at bringing the Metro universe to VR. It's made by the team that made Arizona Sunshine 2. So if you liked that, you will certainly like Metro Awakening. They do a fantastic job at bringing the franchise to VR, and it feels very much like a Metro game. Slavic Punk Old Timer as well. If you like Twitch twin stick kind of shooters, it's not bad. It's not great. It's not too bad. And yeah, I've got a lot of things basically on the go as well too. I even tried that Stop the Spotlight or whatever.
Oh yeah,
that
the
horror
horror
game.
one.
I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed what I've played of it so far. It's very charming. It's very nice. It brings the spooks that it needs to.
We're also trying to get Jeff a code for something else, which we should have had already, but there's been a weird situation, and I'm going to send you something to fill out in a moment, Jeff, and that might help you. But yeah, we have a lot going on. I'm doing stuff for Outer Haven. Like I said, I will be covering the PS5 Pro at some point in the next couple of weeks, as I've had more time to test it out and things. I will have a Dragon Age Veilguard review once I can get through that game, whether that be from a save file provided to me, or if I do have to play the entire game again, that might take a couple of weeks just because we have other things coming up, such as Stalker 2. I also potentially am reviewing Flight Sim for Outer Haven. So yeah, there's lots of things coming up and going on. So please keep an eye on us. Follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky. Make sure you're following the website and everything. Make sure you're following, most importantly, actually, to keep up with everything from both of us, our Open Critic page, because we're on Open Critic now, if you didn't know, and we're going through the process of adding our older reviews as well. So if you're new to us and you find it hard to navigate the site and find older things, then Open Critic eventually will have all of our reviews on there. It's just having time to actually go and add that stuff, because you have to add each game individually and each review individually. So yeah, it does take time. But for now, I have enjoyed this episode. I hope you have too. And it's a goodbye from me.